So we're talking about Unit 5, that is avoiding substance abuse. And when we talk about substance abuse, we talk about any type of drug. And what do I mean by any type of drug? Not necessarily like MJ or any other drug that comes to mind, but also about alcohol, tobacco, and many others that are considered drugs as well. Even though they are in a different category, they are considered drugs because of the effects that they have in the body, especially in the mind of a person and the personality of the own. So today we're going to focus on the following, that is tobacco, okay? We have talked about tobacco in the different activities on T-Box, like what's tobacco addiction, how to be tobacco free, the benefits, what happens when you consume tobacco on a regular basis. And today I want to focus on all of those aspects if we have enough time. For example, what is fact and what is fiction about tobacco, the effects that it may have in your lungs, in your heart, and many other parts of your body, and as well as what are the benefits of not consuming it. Let's start with the facts or fiction. So something that is true or was a myth that was considered something that it was real to happen, but it has been proven that not, or something that is completely real. So in this case, we're talking about a single puff of smoke expose the body to more than, as you see, let me move this out of the way, 3,000 chemicals which are deadly. Almost all make the body unable to work properly. At least 43 of the chemicals in tobacco smoke are known to cause cancer in smokers and cause complications to non-smokers. So 3,000 chemicals which are deadly. So you know that one of the different things that affects our bodies are chemical. And why do I mean by that? Like, for example, if we talk about sodas, if we talk about artificially flavored snacks, like for example, Cheetos, Lay's or something like that, or any snack like a Snicker or something like that, most of the products that we consume that are created artificially, they have a certain amount of chemicals that are damaging our bodies. That's why in Teen Health, we have discussed that there are certain food items that you should avoid if you want to keep yourself healthy. And that's why it is important, if you remember, when we talk about diabetes and many, many other diseases like heart diseases, lung diseases, and many others, that keeping a healthy diet is part of the reason why you can extend your lifespan or you can shorten it out. So that means that you can live longer or live less time than you should because of the things that you're consuming. Remember the phrase that we have discussed before, like that you are what you eat. And in that case, it's completely true. And in this case, you are what you smoke. If you smoke, you're consuming all those deadly chemicals inside your body, and many of them do not have a process in which they go out. So you see that at least 43 chemicals in tobacco are known to cause cancer in smokers and cause complications to non-smokers. If you remember, when we learn about cancer, we learned that cancer is something that we all have inside our bodies. This is in our DNA, but the fact that that it affects some people and not others is because you need a trigger, okay? A trigger, something that starts the reaction so it can spread throughout the body and start doing all the things that it does. So if you remember, a trigger is like, imagine that you have a gun and then you pull the trigger, that means that you're going to shoot that gun to the direction that you're pointing it at. The same happens with, in this case, the cancerogenic cells that are in your body. That when you have this trigger, that is the chemicals that are in tobacco, it triggers it and therefore it starts spreading throughout the body. That is one of the things that are a fact about tobacco. Like, not in all the cases this will happen. Let's be clear about that. In order for this to happen, you have to be really, really an excessive smoker, that you smoke like probably 3 boxes a day, every single day. That will be the case, but not in all the cases. Okay, let's move on to the next part, and what tobacco does to your body. There are 2 things that I want to focus on that are the most detrimental. And why do I mean that for detrimental? I mean like the more devastating effects that will have in your body. The most, you know that the consumer of tobacco not only affects these 2 parts, but many others, but these are the most important that are affected by tobacco because they are really, really important organs that we have studied before, like the respiratory system and the cardiovascular system. And in this case, we have, what does it have? What does it do to your lungs? Well, in this case, we have the example that we have chronic bronchitis, that is a disease where the airways make too much mucus, forcing the person to cough it out. It's a common problem for smokers. The airways become inflamed or swollen, and the cough becomes chronic. That means that it's long-lasting. If you remember, when we were studying asthma, we discovered that asthma is a condition in which the mucus is more, it's increased the production of mucus in the different airways, and as well they are swollen, and that means that the airway, instead of being like this size, it becomes like this, narrow. So that means that less air is coming through the lungs and then making sure or making more difficult the process of respiration for the people who has asthma. In the case of a smoker, something similar happens, that is a chronic bronchitis. So that means in this case, this person is producing more mucus that, if you remember, is blocking the airways of the person that is trying to get the air inside his body. And as well, this person is always coughing. That means that you probably will see the smokers are always like, like this all the time. And not because they are sick or something, but it's a condition that has been generated by the years of smoking. And that's why this is a chronic problem. This is a long-lasting problem because it may come and it may go. As you remember with any other chronic diseases, that means that they spend their time coming and going, coming and going. And that's how they start. It's a condition that they develop. And what is one of the most common that smoker will experience over the years, the chronic bronchitis. Then we have what it does to your heart. Smoking tobacco damages your heart and blood. Okay, this is really important. Blood vessels or the cardiovascular system, increasing your risk of heart disease and stroke, and it's a major case of coronary heart disease, which can lead to heart attacks. Smoking causes high blood pressure, lowers your ability to exercise, and makes your blood more likely to clot. So we have the problems listed over here. So it increases the blood pressure, okay? Because remember that since we're talking about chemicals, when you inhale the chemicals that are part of the smoke or tobacco, that causes a change reaction in your body that, if you remember when we saw about the stimulus and the different things that come from the outside that affect your body, you're going to have a response. In this case, the stimulus is the smoke and the chemicals that are coming from them, and the response is the increase of the blood pressure. Why? Because we will see it later on during the presentation, but there is a certain component in cigarettes or in tobacco that causes this kind of condition. Then we have lowers your ability to exercise. Why? Because that means that you're going to have less air to come to your body, and as well as you know, the heart doesn't depend on the brain, but it depends on the lungs. That means that as long as you keep on breathing, you're able to keep on using your heart. But if air is lacking in your airways and in your lungs, that means that your heart cannot work properly, because that means that it needs the oxygen to keep on pumping and sending the blood with all the oxygen particles to the rest of your body. Therefore, if well, in this case, your breathing capability is lower, that means that your ability to exercise is going to be lower as well, because you're going to get tired easily, your pressure is going to go too high, and at a moment you can faint, or you can feel that everything that you're doing is too excessive, even though it's just probably simple exercise, and makes blood more likely to clot. So that means that blood can become, as if you remember, clotting. That means that a lot of blood cells or red blood cells get accumulated in one point, and then they are stuck. Therefore, they don't allow the blood to continue the different ways that they have through the different veins and arteries. It's like, for example, if I had like, imagine that this is a vein, right? This is a vein, and the blood is going through this little hole over here. But what happens is that later you have the clot over here. Therefore, you have just a little bit of space that is the part on top through which the blood can come out. Therefore, that's why it's really detrimental and really a big problem for people who smoke, that problems with the heart and the lungs can appear at any time if they continue with their behavior. Anyways, let's continue. As I was telling you, there are other parts that are affected as well by tobacco, and we are going to see some of them, that are the increased risk of gum disease and tooth loss. So remember that your gums are what we see on top of your teeth. Normally in Spanish, we call them the encías, but the gums are the part that makes sure that your teeth are stuck into place. Even though your teeth are grounded on the bone that is inside your gums is what keep them there. That's why, like, for example, people who has gingivitis, they have a big problem, because when gingivitis occurs, there is an infection in the gums of the teeth, and what that makes is that it makes the teeth more sensitive, as well that they are more loosened up in the mouth. So that means that they are moving from place to place. If you check right now, if you try to touch any of your teeth and move it, you're not going to be able to. It's going to be stuck forever if your gums are healthy. However, if your gums are unhealthy and they are weak, you can move it. And therefore, over a long time, you're going to lose those teeth. That is the case of gingivitis. And in this case, remember that gingivitis was caused or is caused in this case because of a poor oral hygiene. In this case, even though people may still brush their teeth after they smoke, the chemicals are still on the gums and in the teeth. Therefore, in the long run, they can cause many problems. That's why you will see that people that normally smoke cigarettes, they have bad breath. Why? Because the chemicals are stored there. And therefore, even though they wash their mouth, they use a mouthwasher, they go to the dentist and they do a cleanup, they will always start producing these kinds of odors because of the chemicals that are stuck over there in their mouth. Wounds taking longer to heal because the blood is going through a process in which is making it more difficult for it to start sealing all the different injuries that we have in the body. It's like your, in other words, it's like your blood is not able to produce a scar necessary to heal any injury. Decrease immune system function because many of the different components of tobacco can attack your immune system. Therefore, like in this case, we're talking about white blood cells are going to be less produced or are going to be less effective against certain amount of viruses or different conditions that may try to affect your body. Increase the risk of type 2 diabetes because remember that type 2 diabetes, we discussed it in the last class, it was 2 weeks ago. But type 2 diabetes is when you have an extra amount of insulin, but your different cells of your body do not recognize it, or the receptors of insulin, they don't identify it. Therefore, you cannot receive all that insulin in all the cells. Decreases the sense of smell and taste because since you're always smoking, that means that the many glands that are in your nose are still dying and therefore they are losing their capacity to smell. In other cases, the same happens with your tongue because your tongue is the primary organ affected by smoke since it's going to lose many of the glands that you have in your mouth or in your tongue, in this case, to taste the different flavors. Because if you look at your tongue, you will find that there are many like different things similar to, not to hair, but to different scales. And if you investigate, you will discover that many of these scales in the tongue, they are in charge of recognizing different flavors. There are some that are in charge of recognizing the sweet flavors, other for the salty, other for the sour, etc. So therefore, this gets damaged by the use of smoke and tobacco. Therefore, you cannot identify certain flavors. Premature aging of the skin, this is really common in people that tend to smoke. You will see that they look older than they are. The reason why is because many of the components that are in tobacco affect the different skin cells and skin cell production, that in this case is keratin, therefore affecting the elasticity and also the capacity of the skin to absorb water or to keep hydrated. Bad breath and strained teeth, that's what I explained already. Increased risk of, let me move this out of the way. Increased risk for cataract, clouding of the lenses of the eye, so that means that they will start having problems of vision as well. Lower bone density or thinner bones, which means higher risk of broken bones, including rib fracture. It also affects the calcium that is in your bones. And if you remember, calcium is the main component that produces strong and really big bones. But in this case, they are getting thinner. That means that they are getting smaller and like less dense in some regards. So that means that they have a less surface area. And that means that they can be broken easily. A higher risk of developing rheumatoid arthritis that we discussed in the last class. But if you remember that rheumatoid arthritis or RA is a condition in which you have arthritis in both parts of your body. In this case, like if you have it on your hands, you're going to have it in both hands at the same time. So those are the other effects. You see that there are many negative effects of consuming tobacco. That's why I would recommend you, since this is staying healthy, to never try it out, because sometimes people say, I would like to try it just to see if I like it. And then if I like it, I keep on doing it. And if I don't like it, it's okay. I leave it out of the way. But it's not that simple. Because remember that when you try your first cigarette, what happens is that a chemical reaction is sent to your brain. Your brain stores that reaction. And what happens is that your brain creates a response in which is asking you to eat or consume more of that. That happens, for example, it's related to the pleasure glands with your brain. Imagine it like this, like you have never in your life, let me use a Coca-Cola as an example. You have never drank a Coca-Cola in your life, okay? And then you try it the first day. The different reaction that is going to cause in your brain is going to be like so influential or so amazing for your brain that the first time you try, you're going to say, wow, that is good. Why have I never tried it before? Therefore, your brain is going to cause a reaction in your body that is going to make you that you feel that you need another Coke the next day. And the next day you drink another one, and the next day you drink another one, and it becomes like a habit that you will have every single day. You will drink a Coca-Cola. But over some time, you will discover that your pleasure glands are going to feel that they need more and more and more of the same product. Instead of drinking just one a day, you will drink two, then you will drink three, then you will drink a liter on your own, etc. And that means that your glands are requiring you to drink or consume more of something because they need to reply or replicate that reaction that they had the first time that they tried. The same happens with smoke. Even though you just try just one cigarette, just for fun or just for curiosity, just because you want to know how does it feel, what's the experience that is going to trigger a reaction in your brain that unconsciously is going to move you, is going to want you to have that experience again, and therefore you will start developing the habit of smoking. The same will happen with any drug, either beer, either drugs that you consume through your veins, and many others. Okay, let's continue. And now we're going to talk about the harmful substances in tobacco that I keep mentioning through the presentation, but we're going to see them right now in detail, and they are really important. It's important for us to know because if you remember, well, it wasn't with you, but in economics, we learn, and I will join these two subjects over here. We learned that it is important if you're a consumer that you know what you are consuming, that you know what you're eating, that you know what you're paying for. Because if you know what you're eating, you know how to avoid it or you know how to use it properly. And normally when we consume a product, either food, either a certain item that we like, we never take care of the things that are written in the nutritious box or the product. But in this case, in cigarettes have been having this kind of campaign in which they show people what are the effects of cigarette and what happens if you smoke a lot. You will see that probably in the cigarette box, you will see some artwork of people with many, many chronic diseases related to the lungs, in which they have many, many problems that are so graphic to make sure that people doesn't smoke that much. However, this doesn't work that much because people keep on buying the cigarette boxes. It doesn't matter what artwork represents over there. Then we have the first one that is carbon monoxide. Okay, carbon monoxide that it prevents the body from getting oxygen, the oxygen it needs. So basically, the carbon monoxide is the one that causes that your body cannot receive, or the body cells cannot receive all that oxygen that is carried out through the red blood cells. Because that means what carbon monoxide does is that it prevents that your different receptors of oxygen in your body are less receptive. Like what happens when you have diabetes type 2, that your glands that receive the insulin, they are less receptive. The same happens over here. Then we have methanol, that is a poisonous liquid that is known to cause blindness. That's what I was telling you, that in some cases, there's people who smoke a lot, they will have different cataracts because methanol is causing these kinds of diseases because it's affecting the optic nerve of the eye. Therefore, they are losing their capacity to understand how to, well, not to understand, but the brain, the eye loses the capacity to transmit the light inside the optic nerve and sending the impulse to the brain and therefore changing it into images. Tar, that it forms a sticky coating on the bronchial tubes in the lungs. This is the component that causes the increase of mucus in your airways, and as well is the one responsible of making your airways swollen. So that means that it becomes thicker and therefore they can be blocked over time through the different things that are stuck over there. Then we have formaldehyde. Wait, let me pronounce it again because that's not the way. Is formaldehyde. That is an irritating acidic gas that is used in disinfectants. So just imagine the same component that is used in a disinfectant, like the ones that you use on the floor, the ones that we are using a lot right now because of the condition that we are, to clean surfaces, to clean the windows, to clean the doors. It's a component that is active in tobacco. Therefore, just imagine if you have been keeping up with the news, or if you have been reading about the evolution that COVID-19 has had, it has been discovered in some days ago, Donald Trump was talking about this, that it had been discovered that formaldehyde, that is one of the components of the disinfectants, can also break down the COVID-19 virus. And there was the proposal to use it in the human body. However, that shouldn't be done because it's completely poisonous. Okay, it's poisonous because it not only breaks down the cells of the virus, but also breaks down the cells of the human body. Therefore, many natural capabilities that we have as human beings are lost if we use formalin in really high amounts. That's why in this case, people who smoke have problems with their immune system because of this component is trying to destroy all the cells that are inside their body. Therefore, they are not able to combat the different infections and diseases that may come their way. Then we have nicotine, that probably is the most popular of the components that you will find in tobacco, that it speeds the heartbeat, raises the blood pressure, causes dizziness, and an upset stomach. This is the one that is responsible for causing all the different attacks to your heart. Nicotine, just remember, because it's the most popular and is the one that is more related to these kind of conditions. And then we have cyanide, that is a poisonous to the body in high quantity. So in this case, cyanide is used as part of the addictive components of any cigarette or tobacco, but in this case, it's poisonous in high quantity. So that means that the more you smoke, the more you start consuming a cigarette per day or per week or per month, that means that you are exposing yourself high levels to cyanide. Therefore, it's going to be a really detrimental thing that is going to affect your health in the long run. Also, I want to highlight that this component cyanide is not only on cigarettes, but it's also on energetic beverage like Monster, Red Bull, Raptor, Amp, and many others that you know. And that's why I would recommend you to drink those on a regular basis as well, because they have this component and it is poisonous in high quantities. See, let's continue. So we are talking about the harmful substances, but now we're going to talk about the reasons why teenagers use the tobacco. There are many, but this is the more important or relevant in many of the cases. The first one is peer pressure. If you remember what peer pressure is, or if you have seen it in any other class, it's basically like the condition in which everybody that I know is doing it, therefore I should do it as well. And believe me, that is a really strong reason why somebody starts doing something. I remember that some days ago, I was talking to a friend, and that friend that consumes alcohol. And we were having like a conversation, and when I asked him, tell me, why did you start drinking? Or when did you start drinking? Or how was the process for you to become a drinker? And he told me, what happened was that I had some classmates at high school that they were doing it. Every time that they had a party or something like that, they drank. Therefore, one day I went to a party and they convinced me, and then I had my first beer, and after that it became something regular on me, and it's something that couldn't stop since then. Therefore, he's telling me basically that peer pressure was the thing that impulsed him to start doing this addiction. And the same happens in this case of cigarettes, because you see that everybody of your age is doing it, and you see that people of that age is cool, and you want to be cool like them, or you want to do the same actions they are doing. You try it, but therefore you shouldn't. Blaming the habit on parents. This is most common if you have parents who may smoke. I don't say that you have, but I know some people who has parents who smoke. Therefore, they see the example. Is like they see, like, just imagine it like this. You tell your kids don't smoke with a cigarette in your mouth. What kind of message are you sending to this? Is like, for example, you're telling your kids do not smoke, but you are setting the example better than one you are setting with your words. Remember that saying that actions speak louder than words. It's like if you tell somebody don't do it, but then you're doing it yourself, people is going to follow more your actions than the things that you say. In this case, the same happens. Like childs or children represent or see what their parents are doing while they are smoking, and they try to replicate that. They try to be like them because unconsciously that is the message that they are receiving. Helping teens to feel more adult or in control. You see that normally people who smoke, they feel like they are more like adult, more mature than you are, and that's why they do it, and you want to be like them. But that is not in the case. You can be in control without having to smoke or without having to consume tobacco at all. To look cool or follow a bad example. It's related to the other cases, like people that smoke, they look cool, and I want to be like them, and because they do it, and but that is not a reason that is reasonable for why you start doing something. Remember that many people will say, or probably have heard many times, you're as special as you are, and that is true. You don't need to do the things that everybody's doing just to feel cool or just to feel more adult or just feel more like accepted by other people. Just be yourself. Be yourself and do the things that you like, and don't listen to other people that is pressuring you to do the things that you don't want. Because in the long run, it's for your benefit, and if they want to screw up their life, it's their problem. It's not. It shouldn't be yours as well. Okay. The next one is the reason to be tobacco free. We have already know many, and probably many of them are obvious. Well, we are just going to mention these 5, and then we're going to do the test that I told you at the beginning. Excuse me. So the first one is your breath will not offend others because you're not consuming the different components that are keeping the different infections in your gums and teeth. Therefore, you're not going to have a bad breath and offend other people that are surrounding you. The sense of taste and smell will be sharp because they are not being damaged by the consumed smoke and the different chemicals that are affecting the receptive parts of your nose and your tongue. You will have fewer allergies because since in this case, your immune system is working properly as in contrast with the people who smoke, whose their immune system is getting weaker and weaker over time, your immune system is going to be strong enough to fight any kind of infection. You will have more energy and stamina because that means that your high blood pressure is not going to be a problem for you, and therefore you can keep up with your lung conditions and your heart conditions that are going to be healthy enough to perform in a higher amount of time in longer periods. Your skin will be healthier because you are not going to be consuming the component that makes that your skin loses the capability to keep on hydrated. And finally, we're going to talk about the tips for quitting tobacco use. First one is to make a list of the reasons to quit smoking. Okay. So in this case, we're talking about like positive reasons and strong reasons that push you to make sure that you understand that smoking is not something that you should do. Set small talking groups. So in this case, we're talking about people who may have experience of smoking or may have come out of that different vices, and therefore you can talk about their experiences and get to know. Remember that information is a really important tool for you to avoid these kinds of things. Avoid getting with people who smoke, because if you're with them, peer pressure is going to be applied on you and you will be pushed to do it. Change your habits, like having a better diet, start using something else instead of using tobacco and many other things. Exercise when you feel the urge to smoke, like when you feel like if you have tried already, I hope not, but if you have tried already, try to replace it with a healthier habit, because a habit takes 21 days to be created in your body or in your mind. That means that it can be replaced in 21 days as well with any other activity or any other costume or habit that replaces these effects on your brain. And with that, we're going to finish. And for next week, we're going to talk about tobacco addiction just a little bit. And then we're going to talk about alcohol as well. So right now, I want to know if you have any question. And in the meantime that you ask some questions and I try to answer, I will share with you the link on T-Box for the quiz that I told you before. Just allow me 1 second